"I'll give you $50 million if you read this." The millionaire laughed. The laughter echoed across the pristine white hall like a crack of thunder. Suited men leaned forward, fingers extended, mouths open in disbelief and amusement as the chalkboard stood between them and the boy. 4 letters A, B, C, D were written neatly in white chalk. Simple, almost insulting. The millionaire's grin widened as he made the offer, his voice ringing with confidence, certain the moment would end in mockery. $50 million, tossed into the air like a dare, like a joke no one expected to be taken seriously. Especially not by a child standing there in worn clothes. A heavy plastic sack slung over his shoulder. The boy didn't laugh. He didn't blink. He didn't step back. Instead, he lifted his chin and stared at the board with a calm that cut straight through the noise. Something in his eyes, steady, sharp, unreadable, made the laughter hesitate, just for a fraction of a second. The room didn't notice it yet, but the air had shifted. The kind of silence that comes before a storm began to gather. Unnoticed, dangerous. The building itself was a monument to success. Glass walls rose high, flooding the space with daylight. Polished floors reflected tailored shoes and expensive watches. This was the headquarters of a financial empire, a place where numbers decided destinies and mistakes cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. The men standing in a loose arc around the chalkboard were not just employees. They were analysts, executives, advisors. Each one highly educated. Each one confident. Each one certain they were witnessing nothing more than entertainment. The boy stood alone on the opposite side of the board. Barely 6 years old, small in frame, his shirt was faded and torn at the seams, marked by long days and hard nights. The plastic sack on his back bulged with collected bottles and scraps, its thin handles biting into his shoulder. Dust clung to his skin, not from neglect, but from survival. Yet his posture was straight. His hands were steady. He looked at the board, not as a puzzle meant to humiliate him, but as something familiar. The millionaire, young for his status, barely 30, with a sharp jawline and a neatly trimmed short beard, stepped forward, adjusting his tailored navy suit. His confidence was effortless, practiced. He had built companies from nothing, crushed competitors twice his age, and turned risks into legends. To him, this was harmless fun. A moment to remind his team how far intelligence and money could take a man, and how far the lack of both could not. "Go on," he said, spreading his hands as if presenting a gift. "Read it." A few of the men chuckled again. One leaned toward another and whispered something, shaking his head. Another covered his mouth, already anticipating the boy stumbling over the letters, maybe mispronouncing them, maybe freezing altogether. It would be over quickly. A lesson delivered. A story to laugh about later. The boy stepped closer to the board. Each step was quiet, but with every movement, the room seemed to shrink. The executive straightened without realizing it. One man stopped smiling. Another dropped his pointing hand. The chalk letters were large and clear, A, B, C, D, but the boy didn't rush. He studied them as if they were more than symbols, as if they carried weight beyond what anyone else could see. No one knew where he had learned to read. No one asked. No one imagined that a child who slept under bridges and scavenged through alleys could be carrying something invisible and powerful inside him. To the men in suits, knowledge belonged to classrooms, tutors, and expensive schools. It did not belong to sidewalks and shelters. The millionaire folded his arms, still smiling, but his eyes stayed locked on the boy now. He expected hesitation, fear, maybe tears. Instead, he saw focus. Deep, unsettling focus. The boy inhaled slowly, and in that breath, the joke began to unravel. The silence stretched longer than anyone expected. What had begun as a moment of entertainment now lingered like an unanswered question. The boy stood inches from the chalkboard, his eyes moving across the letters again, not hurried, not confused, but deliberate. The executives shifted their weight. A few smiles faded. One man cleared his throat, uncomfortable with how long this was taking. The millionaire's grin tightened, still confident, but no longer careless. The boy didn't read the letters out loud. Not yet. Instead, he raised his hand and gently traced the air in front of the board, following the shapes of the letters without touching them. A B, C. His finger moved smoothly, like someone revisiting something memorized long ago. Murmurs rippled through the group. What's he doing? One man whispered. Probably stalling, another replied. Though his voice lacked conviction, the boy lowered his hand and turned not to the millionaire, but to the room itself. His gaze swept across the men in suits, their polished shoes, their confident stances, their expressions frozen between curiosity and doubt. For a moment, it felt as though he was studying them instead of the board. You said read it, the boy said softly. The sound of his voice startled them more than if he had shouted. It was calm, clear. There was no fear in it. Yes, the millionaire replied, a hint of impatience creeping in. That's the deal. The boy nodded once, then turned back to the board. He began. Simple. Too simple. A few men smirked again, relieved. Of course. Just letters. B, still nothing special. C. Someone laughed quietly. The boy stopped. A few seconds passed. The millionaire exhaled through his nose, amused. That's it? He said. Congratulations. You read the alphabet. Some of the men laughed openly now. The tension broke, spilling into confident amusement. One man clapped slowly, mockingly. Another shook his head, already bored. But the boy didn't step away. He didn't smile. He didn't ask for the money. Instead, he spoke again. You didn't ask me to say it, he said. You asked me to read it. The laughter faltered. The millionaire raised an eyebrow. And reading isn't just saying symbols out loud, the boy continued. His voice was still quiet, but every word landed heavier than the last. Reading is understanding what's being shown. The room grew still. The boy reached out, took the piece of chalk from the tray beneath the board, and before anyone could stop him, he added something beneath the letters, a small arrow. Then another. Then a short line connecting them. A gives B gives C gives. This stepped back. This isn't 4 letters, he said. It's a sequence. Several men leaned forward now. A progression, the boy went on. The first thing leads to the second. The second prepares the third. The third creates the fourth. The millionaire's smile was gone. The boy pointed at the board. You didn't ask if I know the alphabet. You asked if I could read this. One of the executives frowned. So what are you saying it means? The boy looked at him. It means you're testing the wrong thing. A ripple of discomfort moved through the group. The boy turned back to the board and erased the arrows. Then, slowly, he wrote numbers beneath each letter. A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3, D equals 4. Most people stop here, he said. They think reading is memorizing, repeating, following. He erased the numbers. But real reading, he continued, is asking why these letters are here at all. The chalk tapped gently against the board as he wrote again, this time symbols. Patterns, small marks that didn't look like much at first, but together formed something unsettlingly intentional. The executives exchanged looks. The boy stepped aside and finally faced the millionaire directly. You offered $50 million, he said, because you thought this was impossible for someone like me. The millionaire said nothing. But you didn't realize, the boy continued, that people who have nothing learn to see patterns everywhere. Because patterns are how you survive. The room was completely silent now. No laughter. No whispers. Just the soft hum of the building and the sound of breathing. The chalkboard stood between them, not as a joke anymore. But as a challenge, no one else in the room had noticed Dot, and for the first time since the boy walked in, the millionaire wasn't sure who was testing whom. Asterisk. The millionaire took a slow step forward. The movement was small, almost unnoticeable, but in that moment, it carried weight. The kind of weight that shifts rooms, that bends attention toward a single point. His polished shoes echoed faintly against the glossy floor as he approached the chalkboard. Eyes locked not on the writing but on the boy, up close. The contrast was impossible to ignore. The boy's shirt hung loosely on his small frame. Its fabric faded and frayed at the edges, marked by the quiet history of too many days worn without rest. The plastic bag on his back crinkled softly as he moved, stuffed with bottles and scraps collected from streets that never slept. Yet his posture was steady, grounded. There was no shrinking, no hesitation. The millionaire studied him like a puzzle that refused to fit its box. "You're saying," he began slowly, "that this was never about letters?" Asterisk. The boy met his gaze without flinching. "It rarely is." A few executives shifted uneasily. One of them, tall, sharp-featured, clearly used to being the smartest voice in the room, stepped forward with a scoff. "All right," he said, forcing a laugh. "Let's not turn this into philosophy. It's a board with 4 letters. That's all." The boy turned to him calmly. "Then why did all of you react?" The man frowned. "React to what?" "To me," the boy replied. Asterisk. Silence followed. The boy gestured gently toward the chalkboard. "If it was meaningless, you wouldn't have laughed. You wouldn't have pointed. You wouldn't have waited to see me fail." Another executive crossed his arms. "So what's your point, kid?" When he spoke again, his voice was softer, but somehow stronger. "My point is that you weren't testing intelligence," he said. "You were testing worth." That landed like a blow. The millionaire's jaw tightened. The boy continued. "You thought reading meant proving I belonged in your world. But I've been reading my whole life." He turned away from the board and walked slowly across the room, past the men in tailored suits, past the glass walls and expensive desks. Each step echoed lightly, drawing every eye. "I read faces," he said. "I read footsteps behind me at night. I read which streets are safe and which ones aren't. I read hunger before it hurts too much. I read people deciding I'm invisible." No one interrupted him. "I read your laughter before it started," the boy added. "And I read when it stopped." The air felt heavier now, charged with something no one had prepared for. One of the younger executives swallowed hard. "So what does the board mean to you?" he asked, quieter than before. The boy stopped walking and turned back. "It means sequence," he said again. "But not just letters. Choices." He returned to the chalkboard and erased everything except the letters A, B, C, D. "Every system you build works like this," he explained. "Step 1 leads to step 2. Step 2 leads to step 3. And by the time you reach step 4, you forget who got left behind at step 1. He underlined the A. "This," he said, tapping it gently, "is where I started." He underlined the D. "And this," he said, "is where you stand." The millionaire stared at the board. "You offered me money," the boy continued, "because you believed intelligence only matters when it looks like you." A sharp breath was heard from somewhere in the back of the room. The boy erased the letters completely. Then, with deliberate care, he wrote a single word. "Reading," he said, "is seeing what's really there, not what you expect to see." The millionaire felt something unfamiliar stir in his chest, not anger, not pride, but something dangerously close to doubt. "You still haven't answered the challenge," the millionaire said at last. "The money was offered for reading what's on the board." The boy nodded. "I did." "No," the millionaire replied. "You explained it. You interpreted it. But you didn't finish it." The boy tilted his head. Then maybe the challenge wasn't finished either. A low murmur spread through the room. The millionaire exhaled slowly and looked around at his team. Men who had negotiated billion-dollar deals, who commanded rooms with confidence and numbers. Not one of them spoke. "All right," the millionaire said quietly. "Finish it." The boy picked up the chalk one last time. He didn't write letters. He didn't write numbers. Instead, he drew a simple box. Inside it, he wrote another sequence. Ask gives, observe gives, understand gives, act. Then he stepped back. "That's how you read," he said. "That's how you survive. That's how you build anything that lasts." The room was utterly silent. The millionaire stared at the board, then at the boy. For the first time in years, he felt exposed, not because someone had challenged his wealth, but because someone had challenged his assumptions. "You're saying," he said slowly, "that the test was never about whether you could read." The boy nodded. "It was about whether you could." The words hung in the air, impossible to ignore. Outside the glass walls, the city continued its rhythm, phones ringing, elevators moving, deals being made. But inside that room, time had slowed to a standstill. The millionaire finally straightened his jacket. "What's your name?" he asked. The boy hesitated for the first time. "People don't usually ask," he said. "I am now," the millionaire replied. The boy gave it, and in that moment, before contracts, before money, before headlines, something irreversible shifted. Because the millionaire realized the truth. Too late to laugh at it anymore. The challenge hadn't been solved. It had been revealed. Asterisk. The name the boy spoke was quiet, almost fragile, as if it had learned to stay small in a world that rarely used it with care. Yet the moment it left his lips, it filled the room more completely than any title or honorific ever had. The millionaire repeated it once under his breath, testing its weight. For the first time since the challenge began, he did not speak as a man who owned the room, but as one who was standing inside it. "Uncertain. You understand," the millionaire said slowly, "that what you just did can't be undone." The boy nodded. "Nothing important ever can." A few executives exchanged glances. One of them cleared his throat. "Sir," he said carefully, "with all respect, this is becoming symbolic." The offer was $50 million. For reading. The millionaire raised a hand without looking back. "I know exactly what the offer was." He stepped closer to the chalkboard again, studying the words the boy had written as if they might rearrange themselves. Ask gives, observe gives, understand gives, act. The order disturbed him. Not because it was wrong, but because it was correct in a way that numbers never were. "You know," the millionaire said quietly, "when I was young, I used to believe intelligence was rare, that most people simply didn't have it." The boy listened without interrupting. "I spent my life building systems that rewarded speed," the man continued. "Faster decisions, faster growth, faster profit. Anyone who slowed the process down was inconvenient." His eyes flicked briefly toward the boy's bag of bottles, then back to the board. "I never stopped to ask who paid the price for that speed." The room felt smaller now, more human. One of the executives shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, if this goes public, it won't," the millionaire said. That single sentence carried authority, but also something new, restraint. He turned fully toward the boy. "You didn't just read the board," he said. "You read us." The boy shrugged slightly. "People are louder than they think." A faint, humorless smile crossed the millionaire's face. "Then read this." He reached into his inner pocket and removed a sleek black card. No logo, no title, just his name embossed in silver. He placed it gently on the tray beneath the chalkboard. "This card," he said, "can open doors most people don't even know exist." The boy looked at it, but did not move. "I'm not offering charity," the millionaire added quickly, as if anticipating the refusal. "I'm offering access." The boy finally spoke. "Access to what?" "To education, to safety, to opportunity." The boy's eyes rose slowly. And to obligation? The question struck harder than any accusation. Yes, the millionaire admitted. To obligation. The boy was silent for a long moment. The executives watched, tense, as if the fate of something far larger than a deal was being decided. You said you'd give me $50 million. The boy said at last, I did. The boy shook his head. That wasn't the price. The millionaire frowned. Then what is? The boy walked toward the chalkboard again and erased everything. Every arrow. Every word. Until it was blank. Change, he said simply. The millionaire stared at the empty surface. Not a promise, the boy continued. Not a speech. Not a foundation with your name on it. He turned back. Change how you test people. Change who gets to stand in rooms like this. Change what you laugh at. The room was deathly quiet. Finally, the millionaire nodded once. Then I won't give you the money, he said. Several executives gasped. I'll give it away, he continued. In your name, to places that teach reading the way you do. The boy's brow furrowed. I don't own that idea. No, the millionaire replied. But you reminded me of it. He extended his hand, this time. The boy took it. The handshake was brief, uneventful, and somehow monumental. As the boy turned to leave, one of the executives called out, unable to hold it in any longer. Wait, what about the challenge? The boy paused at the doorway and glanced back. I read what mattered, he said. Then he walked out. The glass doors closed softly behind him. For a long while, no one spoke. The chalkboard stood empty in the center of the room. No longer a test but a mirror. And the millionaire, surrounded by wealth, power, and silence, finally understood something he had missed his entire life. The smartest answer in the room isn't always written. Sometimes it's who dares to see it.